Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for introducing the bill, and thanks to all of you for your patience, because you've been here and you haven't even left, and I've been able to go up and get out a couple times. I want to hone in on this issue of the impact of a free market on everybody, because we sort of pick where we want to pick and pick situations. I mean, one of the examples, Commander, you've referenced Asia a number of times. It might surprise people to know that in 2013, the United States exported nearly 50 million barrels of refined petroleum products to China. I don't find that offensive any more than I would find selling oil to China offensive. But my understanding of a free and open market and its impact on security in the world is, you've used the word, Commander, you've used the word energy independence many times in the context of national security. I frankly think that that's only half of the formula. I think energy security is different than energy independence. For example, and Mr. Mullen raised the point, I think we've established that we import roughly 27% of the oil that we refine in the United States. He raised the point that 30% of our refining capacity is foreign-owned, largely by the people that are importing, that are exporting, or we're importing the oil from. I don't see a lot of incentive for them to change their refining and retooling their refining to take our oil, when the whole reason they own those refineries is to import their own oil. So we export a lot of things out on the Atlantic Ocean that we import back on the Pacific Ocean, other than oil. We do that regularly in agriculture products. We have pasta plants in North Dakota that buy low-cost durum from Canada, and our farmers sell higher-priced durum to producers in Minnesota. I mean, that's how a free market works to the benefit of everybody, and I think we're missing some of that. I would be interested to know, perhaps Mr. Montgomery, you could start, this issue of the 30% ownership of foreign ownership of our refineries, whether you find it offensive or not offensive. That is relevant, is it not, in the context of this discussion of energy security and energy independence?
To me, the importance of that is that those foreign owners are actually benefiting economically from having access to the U.S. market, and are richer than they would be. And I think that if our enemies are poorer, that's better for the United States. But those assets are still in the United States. The fact that they might be owned by Lukoil or by Venezuela doesn't make them not available to us should there be a national emergency, or if we went to war with Venezuela. It wouldn't change the operation of their refineries if we had to take them over.
And I would agree. I don't mean to imply that I'm offended by it. I'm not offended by it, but in the context of this discussion. Anybody else on that topic, including you, Commander, since I'm sort of jabbing you a little bit on the issue?
Well, yes, thank you. And it goes actually to the heart of what I have talked about, which is when you look at energy independence and we look at developing as part of a national security strategy and having an energy policy, when you look at those refineries and 30% being owned by foreign interests, when you look at 30% of our oil, or 27, being imported into the United States, if you want to look at it at a free market perspective, we don't have a free market. There are always going to be a certain degree of regulations on what we control goes where, to whom, and under what conditions. That's part of what government's function is, to ensure that there is a certain degree of level playing field, not only internally to the U.S., but externally to the United States. So I would look at it, and I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about that 30% ownership and what they're doing. It's what is going to be available and what conditions are we creating for our people in the United States to perhaps push that 30% out and create those jobs for the U.S. and for the end money to end up here in the U.S.
But I guess I see in this case the regulation creating an uneven playing field to the disadvantage of the American producer, and that's sort of the whole point in the whole issue. I want to ask, Mr. Ambassador, you've said a couple of times a reference this. I want to ask it in a real specific question. Do you believe, representing just your country, that the world would be safer if the United States was a force or a player in the global marketplace, being the stable, reliable provider of crude oil?
Yes, I do believe that, and I have tried to prove that in my testimony.
You've done very well. Let me ask quickly, Commander, since I have a couple seconds, do you think that displacing heavy sour crude from Venezuela with heavy sour crude from Alberta, Canada would be better and more in the national interest than would make us safer?
If importing it
From Canada rather than Venezuela?
I think anytime we're taking something not from Venezuela, it's for our best interests.
Thank you. I appreciate your support for the Keystone Pipeline. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.